So, interestingly enough, Mouse Control are down one game, and as such, they are bringing arguably what I believe to be their ace player, Pollo, on the field.
Yep, the Spanish chicken player for Mouse Control. Going to be going up against LowLandLions Blink QQ. A player I actually haven't seen around before. I've seen Pollo before. I've been very impressed by his play, but Blink QQ is a player that's very new to me. So I'm excited to see how this matchup plays out in this TVT situation.
Speaking of which, we have on Daybreak in the bottom left, we have LowLandLions Blink QQ spawning as a purple Terran player. And in the top, it is going to be none other than Mouse Control's Pollo.
So our first mirror matchup of the day, I believe, if I've been paying attention, which we can't prove I have been, and I won't allow anyone to say such heresies. But still, our first mirror matchup of the day, and it's going to be a TVT, so it could be a long one. But TVT is very much... I feel like it's actually changed a lot in Heart of the Swarm. With the addition of the ability to do these Hellbat drops, with, of course, the addition of Widow Mines, we're seeing a lot less just straight-up tank versus tank play.
Oh, definitely. A lot more harassment is going on in TVT nowadays as compared to Wings of Liberty. As you rightly pointed out, those Hellbat drops, the speed medevacs, the very useful Reaper openings, basically... a lot, if not the majority of the turns, are going for gas openings as opposed to gasless expands that we have seen in the past that have been so prevalent for such a long time. And this, of course, makes the game more dynamic, action-packed, and overall more pleasurable to watch. Now, if we go back to the... Luciferum versus 4GG series from the WCS, I think it was yesterday or day before that. Sorry, I'm just kind of losing track of time sometimes. Then sometimes, you know, since everybody's going for those fast gases, it can be a little bit silly. But even those Thor rushes can happen from time to time, and they certainly do belong in the matchup. Similarly, as in Wings of Liberty, it was quite common to do proxy Hellion Starport plays or proxy Hellion Banshees and stuff like that.
Yep. Now, we're seeing both players having gone into gas fairly early on. Now, I'm surprised to see Blink QQ not going for Reapers off the back of that. Even if you go the Marine first, then Reaper. I really like to see Reaper openings in these mirror matchups. It's essentially free scouting. And the Reapers now, with their health regeneration, can continue to scout and continue to be a harassment pain long into the matchup. So I prefer nowadays to see players going for that, but instead, we're going to see Pollo going for the Reactor and Blink QQ going for the Fast Factory instead.
And Reactor coming down for Blink QQ as well onto those barracks, but... you know, Pollo, what is interesting for... Oh, okay, an expansion going down. Alright. I was a little bit confused by his build a little bit, but now I know what he's doing. So that's why he was getting the reactor a little bit faster, because that will finish before the factory, so he will have time for roughly 3 production cycles of Marines to come out, so, you know... basically a reactor expansion coming out of him, whereas Blink, he's going with a different approach. He's moving to Hellions as fast as he can to try to scout and pressure his opponent a little bit. Pollo, well, he's favoring the Marines at this point, and I have to say I very much agree with that decision, because Marines have a much greater utility early on in the game compared to those Hellions.
Yeah, I mean, we can see that Blink QQ, really, what he's looking to do is, as he expands, put on some pressure, be aggressive, take map control, try and harass his opponent. Pollo is just looking to be a lot more defensive. He wants that expansion down, he wants to be able to defend it, and he wants to be able to continue to use these units in the future throughout the entirety of this matchup, adding the Starport as well, going to increase their utility with the addition of medevacs.
Now, we do have the armory going down for BlinkQQ as the first Hellions are trying to poke in, but there's just too many Marines, and they would take them down. You kind of need 4 Hellions for this to be effective, but instead BlinkQQ is producing mines. Now, we have an armory for him as well, so most probably he will try to move on into Hellbat production as fast as possible. Oh, does it actually get scanned by Poyo? No, he doesn't see the armory. That's so close. He did see the SCV, so he has to know. Or maybe if he paid attention closely enough, he has to suspect that there is some kind of building being built there, but can't be really too sure, and doesn't have, as a result of this, any idea of these Hellbats coming. Another scan going down, this time I think, yes, from BlinkQQ maybe? No.
Poyo at the moment making some very bad decisions, walking directly over 2 Widow Mines and then loading up his medevac and flying it over the path of the Widow Mine as well, meaning BlinkQQ could spot it, should be aware that it's coming in if he's paying attention, and as we can see, he already has the Marines, Hellbats and Hellions ready to intercept once it lands in the main. So a few poor decisions there from the mouse control player.
We have a Viking on the way for BlinkQQ to ward off these drops later on in the game. Nice defense, nice defense here by BlinkQQ, putting those units there even before the medevac landed. So you are absolutely right. He did see that medevac with that Widow Mine and reacted accordingly. Now Poyo already has his Viking up, so if BlinkQQ does indeed want to get some of those Hellbats inside Poyo's mineral line, he will have to be really careful with that, as well as with the Widow Mine defense of Poyo, having Widow Mines on the side of the mineral line, just in case something like that happens. But no, the medevac is going to not come out that way. It is going to go into the natural, or by the way of the natural. There is a Viking patrolling that area, though, as well.
Yep. Poyo set up very, very well to at least catch these drops incoming, and with a bunker by the mineral line as well, should be more than set up to stop it from doing any real damage. These are the kind of defensive measures you have to take. Hellbat drops are the scariest thing in the world, so you almost have to over-defend them, especially once you've seen the Hellbats come out. But a great defense, those Hellbats doing nothing, getting, killed, getting exploded. One still inside the medevac when that was taken down. So great move there by Poyo, shutting down the harassment by BlinkQQ and going, bam, command center and 2 more factories.
And again, the order for the buildings is exactly the opposite of what BlinkQQ is doing. BlinkQQ adding the factories first and then continuing on to add the command center. Poyo starting the command center before the additional factories. So Poyo really more of a defensive-minded player, more of a more economic focused, as we do have another drop heading to the natural of BlinkQQ, but that is going to be taken care of. Units are already in position. How does the main look, though? That medevac is hurt. It may get taken down by the missile turret if it's not careful. The boosters are on cooldown.
Yep, and he's got Hellbats following it, and the Viking as well. Goodbye medevac, goodbye Hellbats. Both players drop defense very, very strong in this game. I guess that's the kind of thing you learn as a Terran, is how to get very, very strong drop defense against other Terrans.
Certainly.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with what you were saying earlier. It's very interesting to see both players go for essentially the same strategies, but just ordering them up differently to give themselves different options or different timings on those options as the game progresses.
You know what's funny? The whole game, BlinkQQ's barracks has been in a position here at the 12 o'clock to scout for any outgoing drops, but now it has been taken down, which means that basically that BlinkQQ cannot build any additional factories unless he rebuilds the barracks. So that's a little bit of a funny point there that just happened. First time I saw that happen when to a Terran when he was going mech. A little bit careless there, just leaving that barracks. Maybe he's forgotten about those barracks actually throughout the game because, you know, he was focusing on his macro and other aspects of the game. So just left it there, and now it's dead.
Yeah, that's actually really frustrating when that happens. And it's so easy to kind of forget, once you're at like this 10, 11 minute mark, to kind of forget that you still need that barracks
Uh-huh.
because, you haven't used it since the start of the game. You just kind of like, oh, well, it's somewhere. Continue to build your factories. And then you're like, oh, okay, my barracks is getting killed. Can't save it. Yeah, no problem. Go to put down a factory and then be like, oh, crap.
Hmm.
The
Um,
amount of times I have done something like that.
you don't have to tell me that, Jesse. I have my share of failures. You know, the longer I watch this game, the more I'm convinced that this is going to end up in a stalemate. Or if not in a stalemate, it's going to end up in a really, really long game. Because basically, the economies, upgrades, production capability, everything, even the composition of the armies is so similar for both of these players. There are very, very little differences, if any differences at all. Very similar number of Hellbats, the exact number of Hellions, exact number of tanks, very similar counts of Vikings and Marines. The only difference I see in the composition is that Blink has 3 medevacs as opposed. Oh, never mind, 2 just popped from Poyo. So very, very. Everything is just almost as through a copy paper, and even the economies, 68 workers to 71. That's not that big of a difference. The same number of bases, the very similar army sizes. So most probably this is going to end up in a split map scenario here, and is going to come down to perfect maneuvering and outsmarting your opponent, tricking him into moving out of position so that you can strike at the weakest spot. What do you
Uh,
think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's something we spoke about earlier on Daybreak itself. It's a map that
Hmm.
lends itself to that kind of play, but we are going to see our first real engagement between these two armies. And at this point, well, BlinkQQ doing some very nice drops there, dropping units directly on top of those tanks, being taken down quite quickly, but he does have these 2 additional Thors that his opponent doesn't have. That's going to give him the edge in that sky fight. Now, as it is, Poyo, though, his Vikings still effective there, but losing so many of those tanks.
That was a decent exchange, I have to say. But I can't really tell who came out ahead on that. I mean, I don't really think neither player gained a decisive advantage there. Blink trying to set up a foothold here as he's securing the 4th base. So this is basically where the match gets decided most of the time, because the far away corner expansions, more often than not, players don't have that big of a problem taking. The center expansion is the crucial one. If you can get a foothold at the enemy's 4th expansion while getting your own center
Oh!
expansion up. Whoa, what a snipe on that medevac lifting up that Thor.
Oh, that was a brilliant move there by Poyo. Poyo now retakes the centre. Planetary Fortress goes down, and once that goes down, he'll have a very nice defensive position around this Zelnaga watchtower. Now, another advantage BlinkQQ has had, when he remade his barracks, he remade it down at the
Yeah.
bottom right hand of the corner, which means, of course, he's aware that Poyo wants to expand that, and it's delaying that. Whereas his own expansion is already up. Oh, well, it's building at this point in that upper left hand corner, but he's made it down. We are going to see an attempted double Hellbat drop over on that side. Now, at this point, there's not a lot there. Now, the problem with this is the Hellbats are also not going to do too much over there because there just
Yeah.
isn't that much for them to kill.
And I'm a little bit surprised that Poyo actually decided to drop those Hellbats off. Way better to just fly over to the 3rd base and try to drop them there. But for now, since the drop has been discovered, he's pulling back. Another attempted advance in the center of the map by BlinkQQ with those Thors and those tanks. But Poyo already in a defensive position. Both players on exactly the same upgrades. And Poyo has the positional advantage and the numbers advantage in tanks in this location currently. So BlinkQQ will have to pull back and will have to find some other way to engage this location. And I think from this point on, it is going to be only about the center with occasional Hellbat drops to the sides of the map, to the top left and the bottom right. But most pivotal fights, or the core of the fighting, will actually be focused onto the center. Players may even try to get a flank either from the top or from the bottom, depending on if you're Blink or Poyo. So, like I said, it's going to be a really long game.
But I like this about Poyo's play. He knows how important that center is, so he drops down a center tower. He's going to get news on his opponent's movements if he comes down any of the 3 potential attack paths way before BlinkQQ actually gets in there and starts attacking. And BlinkQQ does rebuff that attempted second double Hellbat drop at his most recent expansion with missile turrets, with a planetary fortress there now. That is over. He's going to try and do the same thing to his opponent, and the planetary fortress isn't quite done yet, which means a few of these mules and SCVs are going to get taken down. It's frustrating, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to win the game.
No, certainly not, and not with the option to build multiple command centers around your natural in the late game and just rely on mules having the SCVs only to mine gas. Speaking of gas, take a look at where the gas from Poyo is being dumped to the most right now. Yes, you are correct. We have cattle bruisers on the way, or bottle crushers. Whatever you want to call them, the hulking behemoths of the skies with the Yamato cannon already finished up. And this is a pretty heavy transition.
I am psychic, because I said to you before we started this cast that at some point today we would get to say that there was a fusion core somewhere on the map, and it's there.
Yeah.
It's battle cruisers. I am psychic as hell today, and it's actually a really good move.
It is because you know, in the TVT currently today, in the early and the mid game, most of the units you have are just ground based without the ability to shoot up. So if your opponent fails to prepare for this, where if we look at what does BlinkQQ have? He's got 25 Hellbats, 14 tanks, 2 Thors, and 4 medevacs. Does any of these shoot up? No. So Poyo is getting a good advantage there.
Really?
And now BlinkQQ does see with the scan the army, but he's not actually reacting. Okay, he is reacting, building 3 additional starports for the Vikings.
Once these 2 Thors go down, that's the end of the game, because BlinkQQ will not be able to kill these battle cruisers. And with that happening, even if he kills the whole ground army, everything he has currently on the ground will die. Now, he is putting down 3 starports, he is getting his own fusion core, but it's so far behind, the count's going to be so far behind, and as we see, the Thors are gone, and now that this army has to completely retreat.
Well, the problem is that for Poyo, he doesn't have any Vikings, so there's nothing to... Well, he does, but not enough. And that, you know, he doesn't have that much to protect those battle cruisers, whereas BlinkQQ is going to be producing 5 Vikings at a time, or... There we go.
Yep, they are on the way. Also, a lot of Widow Mines coming out, which is another decent choice here. But the question is, will he just lose too much ground army before they can get there?
Well, very interestingly here, Blink managed to take out all the ground army for Poyo, but admittedly that was a little bit smaller than his, just because Poyo did make the transition into air. This 4th base admittedly might go down, but as the Vikings start rolling off the production lines, he may come in time to defend this just barely, and he's trying to do it, but 2 additional battlecruisers joining the fight, and it's not going to be in time. The 4th base explodes into fragments of metal and wirings. Oh, huge explosions there!
That is the first time I've ever seen Widow Mines kill a battlecruiser, and it looked stunning. But now Poyo is actually going to be in a little bit of trouble here, and I do not like his decision-making here. I feel like he did not learn the lessons of Wings of Liberty. I mean, fair enough, he's going into the Thors now from those factories, but for me, he should not have continued to remake these siege tanks once they died. He should have focused a lot more on it. Thor's definitely fine, but everything else should have just been about increasing that Sky Terran army. When TVT goes this way, it is all about just dominating the air. Forget siege tanks, you just don't need them anymore. You need battlecruisers, you need Vikings, you need Ravens, and that's the kind of thing you should be focusing on.
Oh yeah, I definitely have to agree. I mean, more often than not, transitions or well, not transitions, but tech switches, because this is what it really was, a tech switch, I would call it, rather than a transition. Mostly the tech switch is work in a way that you surprise your opponent with having a very different army composition very quickly than to what you just had 2 or 3 minutes before. So he's probably not going to have a good composition to react to that. So the best way to capitalize on it, as exactly as you said, is just increase that lead in that area. As it is, though, Poyo is increasing his lead in the economy area. As long as he can keep these two additional bases alive, he's just going to be in such a good position, considering, never mind the bank he's got. I mean, come on, 2,000 in the bank?
It is a good situation for Poyo to be in. You know, he's not at the point where he's anywhere close to losing it. It just worries me seeing the sheer mass of Vikings that BlinkQQ has out right now. But he's engaging very, very well here, and these army supplies are just staying pretty.
Oh my
even.
god. This was a really bad engagement for BlinkQQ. He did take out all of the air support for Poyo, but his tanks weren't sieged. He was moving onto the battlefield one by one in a single file, while the tanks of Poyo were in the defensive stance the whole time. Half of them sieged up already, so he lost basically almost all of his army there for not a lot traded back. Another drop or attack of Hellbats to Poyo's expansion, but that planetary fortress will end up defending that. Maybe a couple of units should be sent there, but Poyo is not giving a damn. He's just going for it, trying to attack from the bottom. At the same time, notice he does have the tanks still defending his top expansion. He can attack from both sides at once if he wants to right now.
He can indeed. I'm so confused by these players who continue to make Hellbats. When they're now up against almost pretty much entirely mech versus mech armies. I don't see how those Hellbats are going to function too well against mass siege tanks or Thors or in fact Vikings and battlecruisers. And we're kind of seeing a transition. They both kind of played with Sky Terran a bit and then went, oh, I don't like it, and went back into just making a hell of a lot of tanks. I'd have really liked to have seen a commitment to, you know, battlecruiser Viking Ravens from either player. I feel like either one of those committing to it properly, engaging well, would have taken the game. As it is now, we're in for another big engagement. The Hellbats doing fairly well, but it's the backbone of tanks they're going to crush through. Poyo was not ready for that at all. His Hellbats not able to do anything to stop that, and good drops by BlinkQQ, dropping the Hellbats directly on top of the Thors.
Oh yeah, definitely. So he was able to just crush through that army, but right now he's going to run in a little bit of a trouble here, because with those Ravens, the point defense drills, that means the battlecruisers will stay alive for long enough to just kill everything. And right now BlinkQQ is in a really tough spot. He doesn't have the proper response to this at this point in time. No Vikings in the air, no Thors left for him. Constant scans going off for both of these players, trying to ascertain the position of the enemy units. And, well, Poyo doesn't even need scans. He's got air superiority at this point in time, so he can just move in with a sledgehammer and just burst through these defenses and kill everything.
He can indeed. See? So what I'm talking about, man, Sky Terran's so scary, even with those Widow Mines now coming in. Oh, you do want to be careful with where you put your army over them. But still, with a scan, the Widow Mines will go down. BlinkQQ just does not have the right composition to fight against this. There's no way at this point for him to defend against it. It's too many Vikings out, too many battlecruisers. And with those tanks behind the Air Force of Poyo, it's going to be very hard for him to get his Thors in there to get the shots off that he desires.
Yeah, Poyo has just an overwhelming presence. He's also ahead in the upgrades a little bit. He's definitely ahead on the upgrades for the air units. And this shouldn't take long. BlinkQQ trying to do what he can, trying to go for a last YOLO charge here in the bottom with the tanks. But as soon as those two Thors go down, it is going to be over. And there it is. GG. Well played. Coming out of BlinkQQ. So, mouse control, evening out the series 1-1, and we are going to go into a 2v2 game momentarily here. What a game, man.
That was great. It's great to see TVTs happening like that, and as we noted, Sky Terran, man, it's still viable. If your opponent is going for that heavy tank composition with the Hellbats to back it up, it's just the same. You got to treat it just the same as you did the old Marine tank styles, the old Hellion tank styles, whereby you just transition into battlecruisers first and then commit to Sky Terran, commit to getting those Ravens out, commit to having more Vikings than your opponent, and you will take the game. So very, very strong play by the mouse control player there. I like that. I like that he wasn't afraid to go into a long game. I like that he was building those center towers. For me, his play was just altogether better than his opponents during that match. I'm not saying it was, it was on another level or anything. It was still very, very close, but just these little things, having the upgrade advantage just a little bit, going battle cruisers first, getting the center towers out, those are the things that will win you games at this level of play.